is David Espley. I am the UK Technology Director for Lexis Nexis. We're one of the sponsors here, so I have to do a quick mention of the company. Lexis Nexis is part of the Espley group, and we're currently going on an Agile transformation. This presentation is a bit of a mix between things that we do in Agile and the things that the business perceives we're trying to do in Agile, and maybe a bit of communication and how we work to get the right behaviours inside the company. So the user stories and other Agile failures isn't so much to say things are wrong, it's just how we portray them to our larger business customers which causes problems. And the first thing I want to say in this talk is that I've tried to be a little bit specific, so I've tried to give you some context. The fact is we're probably, everybody who's working at the moment is probably going to be working for one of these kind of companies. And you know, I've worked for quite a few of these different firms, I'm sure everybody has. But they all act in different ways. So how you go and talk about what you're trying to do, how you get buy-in from the business, how you get people involved is different. If I'm working in a startup, I'm pretty much guaranteed my CEO is going to be tech savvy, I'm going to have a business development director who's into it, we're going to have shares, it's all going to be driven in one direction. That's very different than if I'm in a PE firm that's in a roll-up, and by a roll-up I mean we're trying to smash companies together. And that's what I try and do with the technology team and the product teams, etc. is completely different. But this talk is mainly focused, so when we're talking about the points here, I'm trying to sort of focus it on listed companies. You know, so that is companies which are in the FTSE or you know, they're listed in NASDAQ or whatever, but they're companies of a certain size and scale. And as we go through this, that will become a little bit more relevant because actually I feel how you deal with a company is kind of based on what kind of company it is. So the first thing to think about is when you're dealing with big companies, they're the type of things that have big shiny offices. And companies that have big shiny offices and exec boards and teams and thousands of people, I think there's 40,000 people in my company, have a certain way of doing things that is part organic and part by design. But one of the biggest things that you'll find in these companies is over time they've used what I might call an append process to get things done. So that is they start by having an edict. We will have a set of rules. We are all going to do this, and when that doesn't work successfully, people add more rules on. So they don't go back and try and change it or rewrite it because that sounds like you failed or you got it wrong. So what you do is you have an append process. So, you know, for example, when I walked into Lexis Nexis, there was a 12-stage handover process between a business requirement and getting it onto a live site. You know, like it had to be analysed by an architect, a functional architect, an enterprise architect, a security architect, blah, blah. So you end up with this kind of append thing trying to solve problems. The other thing you have to bear in mind is that the company, if it's a listed company, it's probably what you might call an apex predator. That is that the company itself isn't so interested in some of the things that we talk about, especially on the lean side of things, because it doesn't resonate with them as well as we'd like to think it does. The simple fact is that when a company like ours is under threat, we just go and buy something. Now I don't mean that in a disingenuous way, it's just because we've got lots of cash. So whilst we might not always be able to innovate, anybody who does innovate in our space, we can just go and buy them. Now, everything is really quick and yeah, but that's crazy, why don't you innovate, why don't you do stuff? But you only have to look at how Microsoft behaved with something like Nokia, where they've written off $7 billion, and at the end of the day, Microsoft is still in business, to realise that these behemoths don't necessarily have to operate in the same way as your PE firms or your firms that are startups and are looking for venture capital, etc. It's just a different animal. And if you go in with the same mindset to these companies, you're not going to get the kind of buy-in that you need from your business. The other problem is that most people in my company at the senior level, I will be brutally honest, and maybe this has taken me a long time to learn. Whilst I might not agree with them all the time, they are all pretty smart. Most people who get to a very senior level in a blue chip are smart people. You know, they have MBAs from Harvard, they went to the best universities, they work for things like Bain Consulting. These people are good at what they do, but what they do is drive big economic businesses. They're good at managing shareholders. They're good at managing large-scale enterprise budgets. What they are interested in is stability. And that is really, really important. Because these people, this is Morgan Freeman being God, these people have quite a lot of power. They can kind of do what they want to, and we need to remember that when we're working, because we need to use that to our advantage. You know, what we've got inside big corporates is we will have pockets of people who have the power to pretty much do anything within reason. And when I say within reason, the reason is the stock exchange. If you're a listed company, you have certain obligations that you do not have as a PE firm. I'm not going to go through all the differences now between PE and listed firms and why some people delist and go back into private equity through huge amounts of investment and stuff. And I'm sure those who are interested already understand some of the financial modelling that people do. But it is always worth bearing in mind what your target audience is. If I want to sit down with my boss, I've got two bosses. I work for the head of global tech, who works for Wean Elsevier as well. I also work for the UK and rest of the world CEO, who has a group of MDs and GMs reporting to. So it's that kind of complex structure. But everybody in the business is working towards increasing shareholder value. Okay. And what we're all working towards really is this. This is our annual report. Now, if we forget that that's why we're there, we will fail. As people trying to implement lean and agile, you're probably wondering what on earth this has got to do with user stories and stuff. It will hopefully tie together. But the fact is that unless we remember why we're there, and that is to make this document and publish it, we're going to be in trouble. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the purpose of a company like Wean Elsevier, which Lexis Nexis is part of, is to keep shareholder value for institutional funds. Really, my overall boss, Mike Walsh, he is looking at keeping stability in the firm, continuing year-on-year growth that allows people with large amounts of money to invest in us and see us as a safe place to be. Okay? So we have to protect that, and we can do as much experimentation as we want. We can do all the things we want inside that envelope, as long as we're making sure that that growth continues and we continue to protect shareholder value. Because if that shareholder value goes, your boss goes. That's how these companies work. They're expected to hit a certain metric, they need to hit that metric. Okay. So, the thing, and the reason I get hired quite often is people want to move to Agile. 9 times out of 10 I'm hired when things are going wrong. And that's not because, I'm some kind of superstar, it's just that, I have to go into lots of companies when things have gone wrong, and then you sort of get a reputation for going in when things are going a little bit wrong. But these companies start wanting to move to Agile, but quite often it's not for kind of the same reasons as we'd hope they want to move. Because they're looking at these problems. And these problems are, when they're doing big projects, it costs a fortune to deliver. And they're wondering, why is it costing me money? Why when I want to do the simple thing, does it cost me an absolute fortune? Then why does it take so long? I mean, these startups, they do it in like 6 months, and I take 6 years, and it's rubbish. Why can't I get it right? And competitiveness. I have to go and buy people all the time. I can never just use stuff from mine. Why can't we do an AI project? Why can't we do machine learning? Innovation. Why aren't we doing something that nobody else has thought of? Oh, and the other great reason is because somebody else said they were doing it on the golf course or something, but that's kind of the one we're not so keen on. The problem with all of these things is it's isolating the problem into the wrong domain. It is basically going, I've heard Agile sorts my tech team out, it sorts my product team out. Yay! Because if development and product went faster, it would all be good. But that's probably not true. I have a great quote, not from my company, but from another company, who were actually asked by somebody, there was a tech team that had been brilliant, they'd adopted lean agile, they're doing really well, going really fast. And a very high level stakeholder said to them, can you go slower, please? And they turned around and said, why do you want me to go slower? It's like, well, you're finishing the delivery before we realise it's not what we wanted, which I think is a brilliant summation of where we end up. We're trying to build the fastest engine that we can. We're constantly worrying about how we get the most value out of what we do, how we measure what we do, how we make sure everything we do gets better, without actually looking at why we're doing it or making the business look at why they're doing it. We're basically taking responsibility for a far, far wider range of issues. So, we get these questions, are we fast enough? And people answer, yeah, I'll give you metrics, I'll give you measurements, I'll tell you how many stories we completed. Is the quality good enough? I'll tell you how much code coverage we've got. Cyclomatic complexity. I've met MDs who know what cyclomatic complexity is. They don't know what it is. They just have a number and then think that if it goes above a certain number, it's the end of the world, and if it's below a certain number, it's the end of the world. They don't have a clue what they're being told. They are executives of big businesses. They handle millions or billions of dollars a year. Are we duplicating effort? A huge one for people, which is, at the end of the day, am I just writing the same thing twice? Is my business constantly just writing the same things all the time? And these things are then solved by, I'll have a massive design board, I'll have governance. Could we have done it better? I'll tell you what, let's hire 30 Agile consultants to look at what you're doing. So the classic problem is you walk in and they've started with a big waterfall requirements document. We've all seen this. The next stage is somebody says, okay, we'll write more user stories, we'll transfer everything to user stories. Then everybody says something like, oh, right, well, in that case, we need some like save, so we've got a governance portfolio so we can manage it all, because this diagram is super pretty, and if they've written a pretty diagram, it must be the right thing to do. I'm not saying to do this. Please don't do that.
Can you go back so we can take a picture?
Of course you can. That's a safe framework.
Why not?
Why not implement safe?
Yeah.
Can I come back to that?
Okay.
Yeah, I will definitely come back to it.
Let's talk afterwards.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk in front. But then my point more is that if we're not careful, what we do there is we go requirements. Oh, user stories, what we all do. We need governance around user stories and boards and release frames and all kinds of stuff. Let's just implement safe. And we miss that huge section, but I'll come back to why. And it's the same with stuff like, let's have this T skill set. It's great. Everyone keeps telling me, let's have cross-functional teams. The problem with that is that if you're not careful, you end up with people who look like this guy. Now, in my business, I still have systems that are written in assembler. I have systems that are written in COBOL. I have systems which are on Oracle. I have stuff in C#, I have Java, I have Node, I have Ruby. You name it, I have, there's like 2,000 developers in our company. If you try and find people who can do all of those things, good luck. They're going to be quite an unusual person, and they're going to be very unhappy. Which is and the other thing is then, we go, well, let's find somebody, and then you end up with a team matrix that looks like this. And seriously, I've walked into places and they're going, yeah, you get 0.2 of Fred a week because he's got assembler skills, and then you get 0.8 of Joe, she's UX, and like this, We're mixing the problems up because what we've done is we've led context to the business. We've gone to the business, we want cross-functional teams. And the business is going, well, I don't understand what you're talking about. So have point X of this person and Y, and we're bleeding our information across. And this is what I'm kind of going to go on to with this. What we seem to be doing, and if we look at things like, look, I'm a huge fan of TDD, absolutely massive fan of TDD. But again, for me, bleeding context across, the business doesn't need to understand you're doing TDD. We over-communicate with the business. As leaders of Agile, leaders of lean transformation, we need to move them away and talk about things they need to know. They don't need to know this because then I start seeing stuff like this, and then they start worrying about how much code coverage we've got. And as soon as I've got an MD who's worried about code coverage, that's not his problem. What's the problem is that's for us to understand, not them to understand. I'm not saying we don't have to worry about it. What I'm saying is we don't need to bleed it out to other people all the time. Measure success is another one. Again, we want to have information. We want to be driven by metrics. I totally agree with everything everybody's saying about this. But what we don't necessarily need to do is bleed all of that into the business, because these guys like MBAs, they start seeing bell curves and start saying, well, can we get rid of the worst 10% of people? Well, let's get rid of that too, because they're not doing so well. Because they haven't had the context that you've all had. They've not had 5 years of education in Lean. They've not gone through all the pain of not doing it beforehand, of doing things like RUP-DX or whatever, and seeing the chaos of things like that cause. They just know their MBAs. They deal with big numbers. And what we're doing is bleeding out our internals effectively as a programmer. We're exposing our internals to the wider world, and then we're letting them make decisions on stuff they don't understand. The other one which I find really frustrating is us letting businesses do what they were doing beforehand, but call it Agile names. So you're going to do exactly what you did beforehand, but you're now going to use an Agile term for it. That again is not us being helpful to the business. And I appreciate I've got quite strong opinions on this, and it's easier for some people than others, and it depends on the kind of place you work. But that picture gets sent around, and I see people using agile terms to describe things which have got nothing to do with it, but they say, but that's what we're calling it internally. You know, it's like when people say they're doing 3-month sprints. That is, those two words are never used at the same time. And the simple fact is that we don't do enough to make sure that this kind of information isn't bogging the business down. And in fact, I often find that whilst the business thought they were going agile and they were doing these things, they've got just hung up on metrics and numbers and sprints and release trainings and all kinds of things. And it's not to say that's wrong, it's to say that we've not made them focus on the things I personally believe we should have done. You know, for me it's almost like an oil and water situation. We're trying to talk to them and we're trying to bring them in, but they don't have that inclination or time. They don't go to conferences on Agile, they don't spend ages sort of looking at these things and understanding them. And then actually all we do is create a level of separation and we're not penetrating it. What we actually want to do, in my opinion, and other opinions are always available, and I'm not saying I'm right, is help them to set up a vision for what they want to do. What do you want to do with your business? How can I help you achieve something with your business? I've got loads and loads of tools. I'm a joiner, I'm a carpenter. I can make you a set of cabinets. You tell me what kind of cabinet you want. I will choose the tools and you will get a cabinet. What I don't start going is I've got a chisel and I'm going to, So, I try and set out a sort of it says executive job list up there. So when I'm dealing with an MD, I try and set out the things I want them to do. So this is, we want to go lean, we want to do agile. Okay, these are your jobs first. This is what you've got to do so I can help you. And the first one is the company vision. What is your vision for the company? Again, don't forget we're in this sort of relatively low but incremental year-on-year growth. So how do you want to maintain that over 2 to 5 years? Which markets do you want to expand into? Which markets do you want to do less of? Are we doing, for example, doing less print and more digital? Are we doing more analytics? Are we doing less custom research? Great. Okay, what are your horizon strategies? For those who've done any kind of business studies, the McKinsey horizon strategies are a really easy way of segmenting that down. I've got a slide on it in a couple of seconds to show you just in case you've not seen it before, but I won't explain that. Then we're setting out strategic goals and strategic bets. Basically, these are saying, so we have some big strategic goals, and then onto that we're going to have some bets. And these things that may or may not work, and they should help drive us forward. The idea of bets and bet coverage, for anybody who's ever done a bit of gambling, is you have a few bets, and the idea is that between them, one of them pays off more than the others lose. And that's a really easy way to explain it to execs. We talk a lot about failure, but actually what we want to be talking about is, yeah, we're going to have these 3 or 4 things, but this, if any one of those 3 or 4 comes in, it will more than pay off the other ones. If you're looking at 1 or 2x times return, you're not doing the right thing in technology. The risk factors have got to be at least 5 to 10. I mean, really, if you look at Simon VC and stuff, you want 20 times at least. But what we can't be doing is, I've seen projects where people go, oh, if it costs 50 grand more, it's not worth doing. It's like, we should never, ever do that project. If the margin is 50 grand on a 100 grand project, you shouldn't be doing it. It's as simple as that kind of a solution. Clear funding strategy, super important, we'll come back to. Clear definition of success. What does success look like? Tell me what success looks like for you, and I'll use that as my metric. Do you want to increase traffic? Do you want to increase search relevance? Do you want to increase profitability? Do you want to decrease underlying costs? Whatever, tell me what it is, and we'll have that as our metric. We're not going to make it up, you're going to tell us how we do it. Empowerment of the teams. You've now got to empower those teams to do this stuff. You've then got to sponsor this, and you're going to tell all the other execs why you're letting this team run riot, and you're not going to shout at them when they do something which is crazy and breaks the system. So we're in a big corporate, I'm going to do a load of stuff which breaks security and breaks firewalls and annoys a load of people who've been there for 35 years. As the exec, you're going to go and take all that crap from me and keep me protected. And you're also going to set up a fail strategy. So when stuff goes wrong, you're going to explain to people why it's failed and how it worked. Hopefully, everybody's seen a value tree before, but this is what we're going to get the business leaders to help us fill in. So we're clear vision, set up some strategic goals, strategic bets, and then we're going to have some MVPs. Super simple. This is all going to be funded. You're going to be spending money on this. You're going to be putting money into these pots. Yeah? It's that easy. These are what are known as horizons. For those who've not seen the McKinsey Horizon model before, there's a great little video online about McKinsey Horizons. Pretty much every MD you ever going to meet is going to have seen this. So talk to them about the horizons, because actually, you do not want to be doing any of your experiments in Horizon 1. Horizon 1 is not where we operate. when we're doing a transformational program. It's just not interesting enough. That's about cutting costs. It's about, that's the kind of turning the screw stuff. That's the getting it down, making it faster, productionization kind of thing. But not the right place, not interesting, not enough return. So what we want to be doing is playing in Horizon 2 and 3. So that is opening into new markets and doing stuff nobody's thought of yet. Okay, on the budget side of things, really sorry to have a slide that's got CapEx and OpEx on it, but I thought it was kind of helpful. These are made up figures, so don't go away from this is really LCV as capital allocation. The way most businesses work is that big businesses, they will allocate money in capital pots to different jurisdictions or businesses. And then what happens with that money is people bid for it on projects. So you have a situation where you have to submit funding for a year, which then gets funded into a project. Yeah? That is kind of a really, really difficult way to run IT. It just doesn't work, because what they're expecting you to do is ramp up and ramp down. So they're basically going, how much does this project cost? You go 6 million, they give you 6 million, and they expect you to ramp straight off, etc. What we want to do instead is come up with fixed piles of capital going into investment bonds, P&L holders. What a tedious statement, I'm really sorry. But what I mean by that is those people who own this vision, should just have a pile of money and a group of people who draw off that, yeah? So they're not submitting business cases all the time for this stuff. They're not submitting strategic goal business cases. They're basically empowered by the board to spend, say, $15 million for the next 5 years. So the next 5 years, you're going to get $15 million every year. And you can draw down on that, and we will just spend that to go towards our strategic goals and our vision. Yeah, because we've said what our key metrics are, we said what we wanted to achieve, and now we're going to push it forward. So, you've then got a pile of cash. And the good thing with that is you can just spend it how you want to, and people aren't now looking at you to say you're doing so many user stories or whatever. They're tracking you on the business value you're generating, which is what your business sponsor said they were going to do, which is what gets reported back to the board. Do get a quick side note there. Timesheets, I know there's been other talks on it today, but if you get them super simple, if you just allocate whether you're working on a project or you're doing admin, that's all you need to do for Sarbanes-Oxley and FCA. Literally, you can then get it capitalised. I know that's really dull, but the amount of times I see companies with the most complex timesheet structures, if you talk to your head accountants about how it could actually work, you can get it down to just like, I was working on a project, I wasn't, done. And then it can feed back into the other bit. Okay, final bit of this. This is a quote from Steve Blank, which is about lean startups search for a business model. Basically, what we want to be creating inside our large corporate. We've got a pile of cash, we've got a way of capitalising it, we've got metrics. Now what we want to be doing is iterating, pivoting, changing, acting like a startup. So all of a sudden we're no longer in this sort of big blue chip environment, we're now in the startup environment. We've got our head who's into it, we're doing all the stuff and we're not bleeding that out to the business because they don't care about test coverage, they just care about the business value we're generating. And what we're doing is we're constantly changing and iterating based on the things that are happening. So there is that famous thing that businesses that don't pivot at all aren't overly successful. Businesses that pivot once or twice are very successful. Businesses that pivot more than twice, less successful. And that basically says dogmatic, pragmatic, based on market, problem looking for a solution, if you want to think of it in those ways. I'm probably preaching quite on that stuff. Okay, I do generally tend to try and have an agile list when I work with teams, and this is just basically stuff that we try and have between us and the business. Complete transparency in that entire unit. Go and hire people who can supplement what you're doing, train people. The amount of times that businesses go, yeah, this person has never been a product manager before in their life, but they kind of know loads about market, they must be great. I don't want to go to a hospital and have a surgeon work on me who had just been a receptionist there because they've been in a hospital for 20 years. That is insane. What you cannot do is start saying to people, you can do a professional job without support and training. What we want to be doing at all times is treating jobs as being something to excel at. So we need training for them, we need to help them, we need to give them coaching and guidance. It's not saying get rid of people, it's saying treat it as a professional thing. Every company treats development as some kind of super skill, and then everything else around it, from finance to product to marketing to go to market, sales, is just something people can just pick up. It's just not good. Make sure they experiment all the time, make sure that you're learning those skills properly. There are some things which I always do, so that at the top says what I always do, and these are the things I like to set out. So I don't start working on things until I've got an exec sponsor. I'm doing product management over sales engagements, that is product management work with customers until we've got a model. Got a very quick slide on that. We're going for iterative delivery. If GE can deliver power stations using MVP, the rest of us can find a way to do MVP to market. There is loads of stuff on Lean Startup, Rise stuff around how you can do MVP. Personally, it's scientifically proven, just do paired mod programming, either both fine. Continual delivery, everybody's been saying it today, it's a no-brainer nowadays. It should just be what you start with. Ruthlessly automate. Create an ecosystem, that is, don't think one team is doing solving the right problem. Set 2 teams on it, set 3 teams on it. Let them experiment, join them together as things get better. Don't just think that you can ask one person, they will be right. Prove it, use metrics, experiment. Define done for business, not tech. Definition of done isn't it works on a test environment. Definition of done is a customer can actually use it. Yes, it's writing it to use it. Make sure it gets in somebody's hands. Otherwise, 500 stories checked off, nobody's ever seen it. Doesn't help. Very quick one. Traditional sales model for those just interested because it helps with commercial people. Design, develop, market, sell. The Agile version, the same way as we iterate on other things. Design, develop, early adopt, keep iterating. I'm just going to swap it a little bit more detail. So basically, product management owned. They keep going until the segment is fully understood, it's out in the market, we've got people actually using it, willing to pay for it. At that point, you've got your market segmentation, you've got your price, you've got your buyer profile, elevator pitch, an existing base. So your sales team aren't being asked to go and be clever, they're just literally going and targeting very specific things. This is a really easy way to get your exec to buy into product management, being the people who are going to engage with customers until it's out there. Salespeople just over-promise, it's just part of what they do, they're rewarded on sales, not on sustainability. Okay, so I'm not saying all those things will fix you and all these things solve problems in Agile, but hopefully they're a bit of a description of how everything you're doing is probably right, but if you're not getting traction, maybe it's just worth looking at a different way of engaging the business. And then that is me